Hello, and welcome to Visiting Dugout, a Fans First Sports Network production. I am Crystal O'Keefe, and today I have my friend Aaron on to chat about the Oakland Athletics. Aaron, please introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. I am Aaron Cameron. I have been an Oakland A's fan, since Ricky Henderson's second full year in the big leagues, 1981. Your listeners are going to learn very quickly that I'm very old, and I am so old. I consider myself less of a fan and more of a fancester. And I'm so old that I wrote like my 100 top favorite A's of all time a few months ago, going back to 1981. A couple of former White Sox on there: Ron Hassey, Gene Nelson. So if you've got any equally 50-something listeners out there, I think they're gonna have a good time today.
Good idea. I like that term, fancestor. That's new. That one's fun. So obviously, what's new? Although before, for those not watching on audio, I had to support by wearing my cell shirt for the A's because we both have horrific owners that we have to deal with. So that said, what's going on with the A's right now?
Oh, I got to tell you, Crystal, I don't think it's any secret that there is a lot going on with the A's. Obviously, the move to Las Vegas, maybe, supposedly, possibly in a few years, and then the immediate future has them playing in Sacramento for the next 3 to 4 to 5 years, depending on how that works. So they're celebrating, the A's are, this last year in Oakland, trying to capture and reminisce over the last 55 years or so they've played there. I would say to varying degrees of success. This little trip down memory lane is not been a very not been a very memorable one, but yeah, this is the quintessential team in flux right now, and a lot of emotions, pretty much all five stages in the grief scale going on for a lot of A's fans right now. And but the team is playing better than they did last year, more interesting than they were last year. So I guess that's a positive. We'll take what we can get.
That is a positive, absolutely. Coming from watching the White Sox, I'd take anything positive. Um, yeah. Oh, Willow, please don't. So I just went to Oakland in May because I needed to cross the Coliseum off my list because I'm not gonna get to all of them and then have to skip that one. So, and I feel for A's fans so much because I liked that park. It was actually pretty neat inside. I loved that big hallway where you can just go and look at all of the A's history. Like, it was really neat. We went to 3 different ballparks during that trip, and honestly, I liked the Coliseum over Oracle Park where the Giants play. That one was too overwhelming for me.
Yeah. The Coliseum is people. A lot of people don't remember the Coliseum when the Raiders left originally back in 1981, 82. The ownership at the time, led by the Haas family, they really poured money and resources into making it a very accessible, very comfortable, very homey style of ballpark. And I'm sure you've seen the pictures from the 80s, early 90s, when the Mountain Davis monstrosity was not there. You could see the Oakland Hills in the background. There was greenery out in the outfield bleachers. I mean, it was just a very, I won't call it modern, but they made the best of what they could with one of these multi-use stadiums. And it's certainly got a lot of nostalgia. Obviously, it's been coined. I think a writer from the New York Times coined it baseball's last dive bar, which has become its own thing. And it's rough around the edges. It's cracked. It's faded. Anywhere you walk in that ballpark, you're probably going to step into a puddle of something, right? So it's not necessarily aesthetically pleasing, but it's a perfectly fine place to watch a baseball game. And I've flown up like once a month, every month this season, just to kind of say goodbye to the old girl. And it's fine. It's accessible.
Mhm.
It's close to public transportation, close to the freeways. You get in and out. Absolutely no frills, but it's a perfectly okay place to see a game. And I got no beef with it, and
Mhm.
I'm absolutely gonna miss that place when it's gone.
Yeah, I could tell just being in there and how many. I mean, I went. I think it was a Tuesday afternoon doubleheader game, and there were still a ton of fans in there cheering and just being really silly. The people in front of us were hecklers, and they were heckling the Rangers, and they were just really funny the whole time. And Stomper was roaming around. We had great seats. Like we had a really good time there. Also, I don't drink soda anymore, but they had vanilla Coke there, and that's my favorite. So any
Nice.
place that has that is going to win me over. But I could tell how special that ballpark is just from, seeing how the fans were interacting and seeing what they were doing. And I mean, you've got some diehard A's fans. And like I said, I definitely feel for you because that's such a loss to the city even. You've I don't how many yeah, I mean, you've got a bunch of people over in San
Mhm.
Francisco, but you don't have a ton of teams in Oakland now.
Right. Yeah,
So
no, like you said. I mean, it's the history there is it's interesting because one thing Major League Baseball does, I think, better than any of the other major professional American sports is Major League Baseball just they embrace their history, maybe to a fault almost. But I mean, it's there's always something that's kind of getting pushed. These larger than life guys who played generations ago, the records, the accomplishments, the personalities, all of that stuff gets pushed to the forefront with Major League Baseball, and so oftentimes to the detriment of their current stars. Right? You see some of these current guys that they don't necessarily market well or know how to market well, and they rely so much on their past. And but when you get down to a granular level with the individual teams, obviously the Yankees, the Dodgers, Cubs, they're in a different stratosphere. I get that. But like with teams like the Oakland A's, who have won 4 championships in Oakland, who had those 70s dynasty teams and Billy Martin's Billy Ball and the Bash Brothers, Jason Giambi and all those knuckleheads. It's those memories that I fear are going to kind of the smaller ones that are going to fall through the cracks. Everyone remembers Jose Canseco and Mark McGuire, but there were smaller personalities on those teams. Terry Steinbach, Carly Lansford. You look at the Jason Giambi teams. It was the big three pitchers: Zito, Mulder, and Hudson. But there were smaller guys who played outsized roles. Jason Isringhausen and Gil Heredia, and it's those are the memories and the experiences that kind of galvanized the fan base over the years. And obviously nobody's going to forget Ricky Henderson. Nobody's going to forget Reggie Jackson. But man, Crystal, I just it breaks my heart that there is outside of that god tier level of players, that there's just generations going forward who are just going to miss a lot of the lesser known anonymous guys who played big roles and who are near and dear in the hearts of A's fans, but maybe not on a national level. And I don't see Major League Baseball running at breakneck speed to preserve any of that. And that kind of dovetails into the history of the Coliseum as well. And it's just a bummer. I just so depressing and so deflating, which is why I'm trying to just feed my soul with as much
yeah.
A's baseball as I can this year, just so I can not wallow in what's going away.
Yeah, that's why I had to rush to get there. I normally take uh, usually I go by myself. This year my husband joined. But I like to go on solo trips on Mother's Day or around Mother's Day, and it's always to a new park. And this year I was talking to my husband, and I mean, this trip was planned pretty quickly, but we were talking about it, and I was like, I think we need to just go to Oakland this year, and I would love it if you would come with me, and we can mark off, a couple different parks, but I need to get there. This is one I don't want to miss because I do have these memories of the A's, and I'm sorry, but Moneyball is my favorite baseball movie ever. That is my top. I quote that movie to this day. And I mean, that came out like I don't even want to know how many years ago. But yeah, and I was like, we have to get there. I have to see it. I've got to hang out with my A's friends because again, we're not in the predicament of we're losing our stadium, but we're on that same kind of we have terrible owners. This team is down bad, and it feels like a lot of things are just being lost in the shuffle. So I'm glad I made it there. I'm glad that you're able to get there monthly too, because it is a special place and it's gonna really suck when it's gone. So with all the depressing talk out of the way, um, I mean, the A's are in a pretty tough division naturally, but you're only 12 games back at the time of this recording, so it's better than the White Sox, who are 40 games back right now. So, do you see the A's kind of gaining any momentum over the next few years, or is it just kind of we're here, this is a tough division, we're just gonna play the best we can?
That's an interesting question. I think that obviously they lost 112 games last year. They're on a 96 loss pace this year. You can spin that as, hey, they're 15, 16 games, at least on a pace to be better than last year. And, there's nowhere to go but up. I do think that questions like that fall on the shoulders of ownership and fall on the shoulders of David Forst, the general manager, the guys who are tasked with building this roster, and John Fisher, the A's owner, and Dave Kaval, his lickspittle president, made very clear proclamations that they were going to ramp up payroll during the Sacramento era in expectations of making this big splash in Las Vegas. The question is, do you believe them? And based on their recent history, I do not. I do not believe that they have any interest in pouring resources into this team, at least in the short term. And I believe that they're going to continue to kind of tread water for a little bit longer. Can they build momentum? Sure, right? They've got some kids who are very slowly coming along, very slowly improving and getting better. Unfortunately, they have some significant flaws in this roster construction as well. They really don't show any signs of trending upward. For the A's, it's kind of ironic. For the longest time, for the length of the success in Oakland, their best teams have been dominating pitching staffs. They've had the Catfish Hunters, the Vita Blues, the Dave Stewarts, the Tim Hudsons, those guys, and they've crafted a rotation now that is really a bunch of fourth or fifth starters, kind of masquerading as 1, 2s, and 3s. You look down on the farm, not a lot of immediate pitching help, at least not in the starting side. So they're both forced to kind of bottom feed. That's how you get a Ross Stripling or Alex Wood. These guys came over from the Giants last year and kind of cross your fingers and pray they can give you 5 or 6 innings. So I think you're going to continue to see them not be good. I don't think they will be as historically bad as they were in 2023, but with the Astros, with the Mariners in that division, they're a ways away from being at the top half of that division again.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of that, when you think about the future, actually, it's funny, really quickly, while I was landing in Oakland at the airport, we saw a very, very tall man um, with a bag that had like the Vegas Aces patch, and then it was like the green and yellow, and I was like, I bet he just got called up. It's a bummer that he's on Southwest, but he was like probably on our flight. I can't remember his name to save my life, but he was a relief pitcher that had been called up and was not in the game that we were at. But I was like, this is wild. This is a major leaguer right now.
If you saw the doubleheader and it was a recent call up, that sounds like it could have been Osvaldo Bido. They brought him up for the doubleheader, and he pitched. He got a blister actually. He pitched the second game, I think, and had to leave early. They brought him up as like that 27th man rule.
Yeah.
So that would just based on the description, he's a tall, skinny dude with long dreadlocks, and he'd be my guess.
Maybe, yeah. I'll have to go back and look. We looked up his name at the time, but I I've not slept since then, so I can't remember these things. um, but yeah, so with the future, are you happy? I mean, did you follow the trade deadline? And if so, like, are you happy about the return you got, or
Yeah, I as an A's fan, obviously you're kind of inherently follow that trade deadline just to see who's coming back, right? These some established guys are going to get shown the door, and so you kind of want to see who's coming back. And I follow a lot of the very credible prospect writers, Baseball America, Keith Law, ESPN. I follow those guys fairly religiously, and so I rely on them. I lean on them heavily for the assessments of the minor league talent that we got back, and it sounds like the A's did okay. Lucas Urseg, who is a converted infielder, throws 100 miles an hour, but doesn't always know where the ball is going. He had an ERA, I think, about 1.5 at the end of April, and since then it's been close to 5. They were able to flip him for a couple of arms from the Kansas City Royals, and I think a kind of a 4th, 5th outfielder type. And like I said a few minutes ago, the A's, they got to get arms, man. They got to get anything that's got a pulse and can throw a baseball in the general direction of home plate. So my understanding is they got a couple of decent arms, one in particular with some decent upside there from the Royals. And Paul Blackburn was probably the A's most dependable starter the last few years. Challenging issue with him is his health. He's missed large chunks of the season just not being available. So the A's were able to flip him to the Mets for who I believe is the 15th or 16th best prospect. And the A's have a type, man, when they get these guys back. They love the big strikeout numbers, but these guys just walk the ballpark, man. They got Luis Medina from the Yankees a few years ago in the Frankie Montas trade. They got Joe Boyle last year from Cincinnati, and they've got eye-popping strikeout numbers, but they walk everybody. And the A's are determined to think and believe that they can fix these guys. And it's been mixed results, but if you're going to get a guy in with a 9.5, 10 strikeout per 9 inning rate, it's probably worth the gamble. And quite frankly, that's what the A's have to do. It's got to be open mic night, put guys on the mound, see who can be good and go from there. So overall, Crystal, I thought the returns were pretty solid. I was a little surprised that Brent Rooker didn't get moved. I thought for sure he'd be one of the guys to go. I know Philadelphia was rumored to be sniffing around him pretty good. But no, overall, I think this was about as good as this team was going to do with the trade deadline.
Yeah, that's fair. Speaking of arms and youth, you've got Mason Miller, who is probably like the most lovable player right now. Like after watching him at the All-Star game, I was like, I'm obsessed. I love this kid. He's amazing. And he's got a pretty good record. He's got a low ERA. He's got 70 strikeouts on the season right now. So how is it with him? I mean, is that kind of Mr. Dependable, build your team around, or how do you?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. It's funny. There's a very distinct argument amongst A's Twitter as far as should the A's have kept him at the deadline or should they have moved him at the deadline? And a lot of people point to the fact that he's got all these years of control. He's very, very young. He's very, very cheap, which, as you know, is first and foremost for A's ownership. I am a believer that he is a guy you absolutely want to keep. They're going to have to sell tickets in Sacramento, right? And he's exceedingly marketable. He's got this baby face, but he's absolutely mature beyond his years. He is a type 1 diabetic. He meets with kids in every visiting city without fail who are also diabetic to provide encouragement and support. I mean, it's just you could not find a guy like this if Hollywood came up with him. Yeah. he's just incredible. The thing about him is that everybody talks about his fastball, 102, 103, 104, and it's unhittable.
Hmm.
But his secondary stuff is coming along as well. I saw him at spring training back in March, had seats behind home plate, and I tweeted out the second I saw his slider. I was like, holy cow, if this dude can harness the slider, the changeup, these secondary pitches, it's lights out. And it's been kind of in fits and starts. He's had rough patches where he kind of drifts away from the fastball too much and tries to get a little too cute, working the corners with the slider. He got burned in San Diego down here a couple of weeks ago, just trying to, nibble and bite the corners. And it's just like, dude, you throw 103, man, just
Yeah.
let him hit it. But no, he is one of one. And obviously the challenge with him is he's got a very long, complex injury history. He had it in
Hmm.
college. He had it in the minor leagues. It's what drove the A's to put him in the bullpen. And you may or may not have heard whispers that he wants to maybe consider go back to starting next year. But I'd be stunned if the A's put him back in the rotation. He's a closer now,
Yeah.
and I think the A's have to just. I don't mean this to sound morbid or fatalistic, but the A's have to get as many innings as they can out of this kid. I think before what is going to be inevitable. I mean, you don't throw
Yeah.
103 with his injury history and stay healthy for very long. So I think the A's just have to ride this out. I'm not saying he's going to be a lifelong A. Nobody is. But
Mhm.
I think for the time being, right now, he's absolutely the kind of guy, a tent pole guy on your team. You keep him, you celebrate him, you put him face forward to sell tickets, move merchandise, and just ride him as long as you can.
Yeah, I love that he goes and visits kids at the hospitals because that kind of brings in that whole representation matters. Because a lot of these kids are like, I'm not going to make to Major League Baseball. I have this illness going on. It really sucks, and I love that he's like there and showing them what's possible. He's just such a charming guy. I just want to like squeeze his cheeks. I love him.
It's incredible. I have a very dear friend. He coached my son in Little League, and his son is a diabetic, and played Little League. Made it to play college down here at San Marcos, and to have folks like that who kids can see and say, hey, you know what, this is not going to hold me back. It's not going to be what defines me. It absolutely matters. You talk about representation, and it absolutely matters. And the A's, to their credit, I think have done a very good job of highlighting, what Miller does, the kind of person that he is. And I've got a lot of beefs and issues with this franchise, but their handling of Mason Miller has been impeccable. And kudos to everybody from, manager Mark Kotze down to their, PR folks and marketing folks. I mean, he is incredible. He's appointment viewing, and if your listeners out there get a chance to see him in the ninth, don't go to bed, don't go upstairs, don't go to the refrigerator. You'll watch this dude. He is one of one.
Yeah, he's wonderful. And like I said, I just absolutely fell in love with him at the All-Star game, and I was like, this kid, he's great. So we will take a very quick break and then come back and break down what's going to happen in this game. This is where I vamp on YouTube. All right, welcome back. So let's break down the series with this A's. We're a little too early for probable pitchers. Just when we are recording, the White Sox did put out Jonathan Cannon and Drew Thorpe for their probables, but the A's don't have anybody listed, and the White Sox have, I don't know, like 3 pitchers right now. So with that said, what can you tell me about this like pitching rotation? I know you mentioned there are really a lot of 3s and 4s, but who kind of really sticks out on this rotation?
Well, I think one guy you almost certainly will see is Ross Stripling. He pitched yesterday, or excuse me, Wednesday against the Giants. Lost 1-0, and he's been shockingly good
Mm-hmm.
since coming off the disabled list. It's only 2 starts, But after he got off the disabled list, he was something like 1-9 with an ERA close to 6. I mean, it was abominable watching him.
Mhm.
And I love baseball, and the stories of the old gunslinger trying to find a few bullets left is kind of inspirational in a way. But when you don't have any bullets left, it's hard to watch. But so I think he'll be one guy. As far as the best pitcher on the staff, I mean, it's probably one of the most milk toast looking guys you'll ever see, J.P. Sears, who came over from the Yankees. He's not very tall. He's a lefty. I think he tops out at about 93, 94. One thing that you will notice about him if you see him pitch in the series is he is a gold medal sweater. That guy sweats bullets. He'll change jerseys like 5 times during a game. It's insane. But he doesn't throw hard. He relies on working the corners. But he's that quintessential bulldog. He goes out there and he just kind of hucks it up there, and he's struggled a little bit. The strikeout rate's been a little lower this year than previous years, but he's probably our most dependable starter right now. And if he gets an opportunity to pitch, he's one of these 5, 6, maybe 6 and a third inning guys before we turn it over to the bullpen. But on this team, that qualifies as kind of a workhorse. So he'd probably be at the top of the list. It's weird with the Paul Blackburn trade. It's going to kind of do a little bit of rearranging, I think, in the rotation. My guess is that Joey Estes comes back from being a long man in the bullpen to the rotation. He's kind of a what you see is what you get guy, and I joke on Twitter that he's usually good for like one great start a month, and he'll have like 4 starts where you're like, man, I don't know. His ERA is around 5. He flirted with a perfect game a few weeks ago. After that, he threw a complete game shutout, I believe. He's little Jekyll and Hyde, but it's again for this A's team. It's like, okay, you're just kind of hoping you're getting the good one, whichever Jekyll or Hyde is. I can never remember. But the rest of the pitching staff is it's guys. Right.
Yep.
We talked about Stripling. They've got Mitch Spence. He was a Rule 5 pickup from the Yankees last year. Tops out at about 91, 92. Pretty good slider. But if the slider isn't sliding, quick. And those games they're rough to watch. But he's been better lately, the last month or so. So, yeah, the A's starting staff is just kind of it's just kind of there. And I've watched most of the games this year. You turn it on, and usually by about the second inning, you kind of know what kind of evening you're in store for.
Yeah, I understand that all too well. Like with the ones you'll see, you'll probably also see maybe Chris Flexen. I'm not sure, or they could have just called up somebody from I don't know, the Barons even. Who knows where we're at this point? And Jonathan Cannon has been really solid, but people can also really take advantage of him. I think people are learning, his pitches and what he's doing. And then Drew Thorpe came out phenomenal. And I was like, this is the second coming of Dylan Cease. And I stand by that statement, but he's been just rocked the last few games. But then again, I'm like, Dylan Cease went through it's just growing pains because he's got a beautiful slider. He can throw some really intense heat and he's great, but he still has a lot of growing to do in this spot. So I'm hoping it's a Dylan Cease and not a Michael Kopech situation, because those are 2 just very drastic pitchers.
I am excited for a genuine series between 2 teams with pitching staffs that are just essentially 5 guys with growing pains. So this should be fun. If nothing else, I might get through at least 2 or 3 beers watching this with all of the pitching changes.
Right. Yeah, and I don't think you'll see Garrett Crochet because he is pitching. I think he might be pitching. No, he's pitching tomorrow. So you probably won't see him during that series, and he's like the best you can get on our team. He is very good. So yeah, you're not gonna see a ton of excellent pitchers, you're going to see some guys from our team too.
All right, all right. We're kindred spirits then.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
we are. Our teams are a little too alike, probably. So, with that said, which player on this team do you think would be the biggest threat to the White Sox?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. Right now, it is Lawrence Butler. That
Okay.
kid is ridiculous. He's on the heater of all heaters right now. He came up last year and played okay, but then the A's decided to put him in center field, and he's just not a center fielder. And I think it kind of created a bit of a domino effect with his performance at the plate as well. And by the end, he just looked broken and defeated, and the body language was miserable. He broke camp with the team this year,
Mm-hmm.
came up, but struggled again. He could not get that average above 200, and it was kind of the same failures on top of failures, mistakes on top of mistakes, and it just kind of created this cascading effect where he just needed a reset. And the A's, to their credit, sent him down to AAA Vegas, left him there for a little bit, brought him back up. My understanding and what I've read in reports is that their hitting coordinator, Darren Bush, worked with him on keeping his head still in his at bats. Made just this simple adjustment. Butler bought into it, and he hit like 363 in July. He slugged
Mm-hmm.
over 800 in the month of July. Hit 3 home runs in a game in Philadelphia. He's joyous and he's fun, and he is as country as your cousin's sweet potato pie. I love this kid so much, and he's just having fun again, and he's having great at bats. I think he's a little miscast. The A's have been using him in the leadoff spot. I don't really think he's a leadoff guy, but we don't really have anybody else. But
Mm-hmm.
he's absolutely a guy to watch, and genuinely, and I say this without A's fan bias. He's just one of those players you really can't take your eyes off of. He's 6'4" with braids and a dynamite smile,
Yeah.
and I sincerely believe he's just one of those kids that's on the cusp. If he can continue the growth
Mm-hmm.
and keep playing how he's playing, he's on the cusp of being a crossover star. Even with the anonymity that comes with the A's, he's that good, and he's the guy I think that has the potential to, with one swing of the bat, just turn the momentum of any game.
Yeah, I saw 10 home runs in July, both
Yep.
him and Brent Rooker, who I love. Yeah, and it's crazy how just fine tuning one little thing can really make the biggest difference. I went through that just with my son when he was playing baseball in the spring. He was in this really bad hitting slump. I took him to the batting cage to just watch what he was doing, because I'm not going to interfere during a game, obviously. So I'm just trying to watch what he's doing. And I was like, hold on, let's like rework this and just a little bit. And I'm kind of like moving him around and shifting him. And I was like, try this stance and, just keep your eye on that ball. And then boom, it was like, I don't know. I don't even know. It was just amazing. He's hitting it almost every single time. And now he's like hitting in games and getting on base and he's like feeling more confident. And I was like, see, you just needed a little fine tuning, and mom knows best. Mom knows baseball, therefore she knows best. And like I said, his confidence was way up. He was finally hitting. He was, being more of an impact on that team because he was in this league where he just turned 14, and this league was like 13 to 16-year-olds. So it's a weird transition into that already. And, he's not feeling as confident because he's got these like 6 feet tall guys that are, hitting him out into the outfield. And then he's just like maybe hitting a single. So yeah, it's wild what that can do.
Well, I think, Crystal, you bring up a really, really good point. I mean, I think the most important thing is listening and is buying in.
Hmm.
And this A's coaching staff, I've had my issues with them on Twitter, and not the usual, fire everybody type of knuckle dragging nonsense. I think they have failed some players, certain
Hmm.
players. Kristen Pache comes to mind. I think they've handled Esteury Ruiz terribly.
Yes.
But in the case of Butler, it's clear they believed in this kid. They looked at his exit velocity numbers. They looked at a lot of the underlying data that said, hey man, you're you're there. We just need to kind of twist a few knobs and make a few tweaks to kind of get you to that next step. And to Butler's credit, he listened. He
Mhm.
bought in, just like your son. He bought in, and this is regardless of age or talent level or something. My son played little league, travel ball, high school. My son was famous for you tried to correct something, and if it didn't work the first at bat, he this
Yeah.
I'm going back to the old way. But
Uh-huh.
but Butler, you know, swallowed his pride, and went out there and it's like, okay, my way ain't working, so let me try this new one. And I feel like I need all the wood in this room to knock on. I don't want to jinx the kid, but it's been working, and buying in to that messaging has absolutely transformed this kid, and I'm hopeful going forward that this is the Lawrence Butler that A's fans get to see.
Right. Yeah. I need to go in on the White Sox team and fix some chances there, see what they can do. So,
Clearly.
yeah, it's brutal. What are the keys for the A's to take this series, you think?
Well, the A's right now, I think, are amongst the major league leaders in home runs, and it sounds wildly oversimplified, but do more of that. Hit more balls over the fence. I
Mhm.
think is a pretty good start. Honestly, they've gotten tremendous production out of Brent Rooker this year. I talked about Lawrence Butler. Up and down the lineup, though, there's a lot of guys who aren't superstars and aren't putting up superstar numbers in the least, but guys like Miguel Andujar, former Yankee and Pirate, Abraham Toro, who's kind of gets these timely hits at just the most needed and necessary times. I think if the offense can continue to just put up crooked numbers
Mhm.
in innings multiple times, this feels like one of those series where you're going to see 13-6 games or 11-7 games, just because it's getting later in the season. The A's pitching staff is starting to. You can see they're kind of much what happened like last year. They're kind of starting to, I think, get a little fatigued.
Mhm.
People are pointing to the July record. The A's had a winning record in July for like the first time since 2022, and it's great. But they play the Angels like 10 times out of 24, so it's let's tap the brakes a little bit here. This isn't the 29 Athletics, the 27 Yankees here, but I think if the offense can continue to kind of chug along, again, top to bottom, they've been getting pretty decent power production. The averages aren't necessarily great as a team. The on base percentage not necessarily great as a team, but when you can hit the ball 420 feet, you're going to be at least competitive,
Yeah.
right? The A's had a run differential last year of like 337, negative 337. This year it's only 67. Last I checked,
Mm.
so they're in games. It's just a matter of hanging around long enough and getting those hits when they need them. And again, Rooker's going to hit. Butler's been on fire. You hope the bottom of the order can kind of come through with some clutch hits as well. And I think that more than anything else is going to determine which way the series goes.
Mhm. Yeah, and I was looking when we were talking about the 10 home runs in July, that hadn't happened since July 1996, and that's Mark McGwire, for the old heads that watch that baseball.
Yeah, they've the A's broadcast has been airing a graphic with a long list of A's players who have done that, and it's all McGuire, Canseco multiple times. It's just this who's who. Reggie Jackson is on the list. This
Mhm.
who's who of A's legends, and then there's Lawrence Butler. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. It's a rarefied air, man. Good company, absolutely.
Yeah, it's gotta be great to be in the same even sentence as some of those players,
Oh yeah,
especially, you know, Mark McGwire was even during the steroid, and I will say it with my whole chest, bring back steroids because that was the best time in baseball. Oh my gosh, all those home run derbies. Um, but even that, I mean, his notoriety is so huge.
yeah,
Everybody knows Mark McGuire. My
yeah.
kids know my son knows Mark McGuire and he's 14. So I mean those are good comparisons to
Well,
have.
to your point about the steroid era, I mean, baseball can run from it as fiercely and as quickly as they want to. But I mean, it brought in a generation of fans, and you're going to have the scolds like Costas and Verducci, and who tut tut and wag their fingers at the players and at the fans for
Hmm.
daring to embrace it. But it happened, right? You can't those wins, those losses, those hits, those home runs, they happened. We're never going to know who all was on and who all was off. So my belief has always been you just kind of hold your nose,
Yeah.
you acknowledge it, you put the best from that era in the Hall of Fame, and if you've really and truly have a program, a testing program, and I think they have a fairly robust testing program now. Then okay,
Mhm.
you're good going forward. But it's absurd and silly to pretend that 1998 didn't happen, to pretend that 762 isn't the record. It's so silly.
Yeah, those were the years that I mean, it's actually in my baby book that I used to do the seventh inning stretch with my Aunt Jill when I was like a toddler. Um, so it's been in my blood for a long time, and I'm nearing 40. So obviously the 90s era of baseball was really big for me. I was old enough to really understand what was going on, and it was fun to watch. And like I said, you had Barry Bonds and Mark McGuire and Sammy Sosa, and you're like, this is the best ever. They just hit home runs all the time.
Yes. No argument here. I mean, obviously, I'm older than you, but I mean, my coming of age really were those Bash Brother teams, and the joy and the experience and the excitement. I mean, it all happened, man. It all formed my fandom,
Mhm.
and I can't be the moral scold and disavow the fact that the 1989 A's won the world championship, the only world championship I've ever seen. I was 16 at the time that I've ever seen a baseball team win. My baseball team win. So yeah, no, I just, I'm not here to think of the children. I'll
Yeah.
take care of the moral upbringing of my kid. I'm good. I'm good. Bob Costas, Tom Verducci. I'm good. I swear. And I just hold those memories and those moments so fondly, so near and dear to my heart, and it's what shaped my fandom from then until now.
Yeah, of course. I completely understand all of that. Like you said, I grew up with it, and it was like all the women in my family that watched baseball, weirdly enough, and like my grandpa. But it was mostly the women, especially my Aunt Jill, and she lived in Chicago for a while, and so I was going to Cubs and Sox games, and Cincinnati was really close. I mean, I was able to get to so many different games and watch so much of it that it stuck for life. So now there's even though my team is the absolute worst, I'm gonna still watch it.
Well, I mean, I think that just goes to show fandom is complicated,
It
right? I mean,
is.
it's not buying a jersey or putting on a cap. It's complicated, right? Our teams sign players who have questionable virtues.
Mhm.
Our owners certainly don't have the fans' best interests at heart. I mean, it's a complicated relationship, and to boil it down to um, who you know who used steroids and who didn't use steroids, and what exactly it's going to take for fans like you and me to turn our backs on teams. I mean, it's an individual decision. It's an individual choice. My A's, famously, about 25 years ago, there were reports that they were sniffing around John Rocker. He had been with the Braves. He'd been with the Mets, or excuse me, with the Braves, and he'd said some awful, just indefensible things
Yep.
about people of New York and minorities in particular. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. No, they can't possibly be considering this. And again, I don't know the veracity of those rumors, if they're true, if they were not. But for me, that would have been like, okay, we're it's something for me to consider if I need to continue, my fandom going on here. But then, on the less serious side, back in 1990, the A's were looking for a left-handed hitter, and they inquired about Kirk Gibson, and they were apparently very close to getting him. And I'm an A's fan who grew up in Southern California, and Kirk Gibson broke my heart, man. He broke my heart, and he stomped on it, and he spit on the ashes. I was like, you guys can't possibly bring that guy into my team. They ultimately went to go get Harold Baines, and that worked out quite well for them for a few years. But it's a complicated relationship, and
Hmm.
it's hard to explain to people who don't follow sports or who don't understand, and why we subject ourselves to 162 games of misery from late March to the end of September. But I think your perspective is a good one. It goes, the roots are deep, and
Hmm.
it's hard to just pull that tree out and toss it aside. It's a lot, man, and I'm feeling a lot. Right now as an A's fan, for all this time, it's just one of those things that's kind of unexplainable unless you're kind of in the fraternity sorority of those of us who feel your pain, Crystal.
Yeah, and I've talked about this, gosh, I mean, so much, but I always mention the mental gymnastics that you do have to do as a fan. You mentioned very questionable things. We have a Dugout of History episode that we plan to do on that whole mess. Um, but and then, very recently with the White Sox with picking up Clevenger twice. Um, I'm just like, I hate this man. I don't want to watch him. I don't want to cover games where he pitches. And it turned into me both years just donating a ton of money. The first year was domestic violence organizations for every start. And I would send it to Rick Hahn. Every single time he got a thank you letter saying thanks for donating.
Yeah.
And then this year it was like a child abuse organization.
Mm.
And that was like the only way. And even then, I still tried not to watch his starts unless I did
Mm.
have to cover it. But that was like the only way that I felt like I could, in good conscience, watch this team.
Sure.
Because it's tough to support those guys. I remember when the Cubs were in the World Series, I was donating a bunch of money anytime Aroldis Chapman came into close. It's just one of those things where you just have to do what works for you to still watch this team because you love this team
Yeah.
so much. But sometimes they do very questionable things, and
Well, I think that's actually a wonderful dovetail into the A situation. And
mhm.
obviously, I'm in no way, shape, or form comparing Fisher and Cavill to Clevenger
Yeah,
and
no.
Chapman in no way. But obviously, A's fans, they're hurt, they're broken,
Mhm.
they're angry, and understandably so. And you've got a very large segment of A's fans who won't give John Fisher another nickel of their money, and are not going to games, or not buying the merchandise, or not watching the games. And you got fans like me who I grew up, kids wanted to go to Disneyland, and I wanted to go to the Coliseum. I wanted to see this magical place.
Mhm.
And again, to your point, we all deal with it in our own way. And for me, I'm glad that I'm still watching. There is still a small ecosystem of Ace fans who are as passionate as me, and I engage with them online or in group chats or whatever. And again, like I said, this is an interesting A's team, and they've got interesting stories going on, and their broadcasts are interesting. This is probably before your time, but my man Shooty Babbitt, former A's infielder from 1981, has popped in as a color commentator, filling in for Dallas Braden, and he's just this delightful. He spits these quotes that are just. I feel like he's only talking to me, and it's just wonderful. He reminds me of the entire combination of my dad's side of the family, and so it's like I get these little Easter eggs, these little gems, these little jewels that are fun to watch, and it's just one of those things where it's like I don't know what's going to happen in the next few years as far as my fandom goes, but I'm holding on to this so tight, and
Yeah.
maybe I'm sitting in the denial phase myself because I kind of know what's going to happen and where it's all going to lead, but yeah, no, we're in early August now as we record this, and And dude, I've watched pretty much every A's broadcast. Jenny Cavnar, Chris Carey, Dallas Braden, Shooty Babbitt now, and those guys have been pretty much narrating, my evenings for the
Mhm.
last, 3, 4, 4.5 months.
I give Steve Stone a lot of shit, honestly, but I mean, because he's just turned into this grumpy old man. But his knowledge of baseball is just so deep, and I love listening to his stories. And, if you're putting up with this team that is just disastrous on the field, you want some kind of comfort. So when Steve Stone is not there, I'm just like, I don't want to watch this. I'm going to mute it. I don't know why I'm watching this game in the first place. They're going to lose, but I put it on still, and then I'm happy when it is Steve, because if it's not, it's like Scott Posednik or like Gordon Beckham, and I'm like, I don't want to listen to Gordon Beckham talk anymore, ever.
Oh, it's funny how the broadcasters really they've helped, right?
Mhm.
They've helped me kind of get through this. And Dallas Braden famously threw the perfect game on Mother's Day a few years back. Big bombastic personality. Chris Carey is part of the Carey family dynasty. The kid's a prodigy. I think he's 24. He's ridiculously good. I mean, he's like could be the national voice of baseball. Good one day. Jenny Cavnar came on this
Mhm.
season. I think they've got a very weird split. I think she's doing like 97 of the games, and Carrie's doing like 65. And it obviously was challenging, I think, because her and Braden, I think, only had one spring training game together, and it got rained or
Oh
canceled
yeah.
after like 2 innings of rain or whatever. And so, she's got a lot of BS, invective, and venom from the usual mouth breathers and knuckle draggers who, how dare a woman invade their space, blah blah
Mhm.
blah. But again, it's these voices who bring this to me and have talked me through this, and it's uh, um, it's just been a treat just to kind of have those um, those folks kind of be like my therapists to kind of get
Mhm.
me get me through these last few months. So yeah, no, I've again I've tried to enjoy and embrace every aspect of all of this, and I'm going to be September 30th or whenever the last day of the season is. I'm just going to be like, man, what do I do now?
I know. That's the other thing I love. That's why I think I love to just kind of go on Twitter during these games, because I'm sitting here reading other. I mean, I'm sitting here virtually with all these other people that are watching this game, and they're tweeting about it, and they're making jokes, and they're doing silly things, and like that's why I love just interacting with like this baseball Twitter community in general. Like I love, I have all these Twins fans that I just adore now, and I'm like, we are supposed to be my enemy, but like I love you to death. Like Shayla, she's a blast. She's so much fun. And then I've got Jen with the A's. Like I have all of these great baseball friends that I've made over the last few years, starting in like the pandemic when everyone was just on their phone. You couldn't be at a game. And between that and, listening to these old stories that Steve Stone tells, that is your therapy. That's what gets you through the really rough patches that your
Oh,
team
sure.
goes through.
Sure. The whole "it takes a village" cliche, I know has been beaten into the ground and done to death. But I mean, to your point, dude, I'm an A's fan who lives on the West Coast. I would have otherwise never had reason to give two thoughts to teams like the Blue Jays, but
Mhm.
Blue Jays Twitter is ridiculous. I love those guys, Leslie and Ruth, who you had on your show previously. Royals Twitter is just this Bobby Witt love fest
Yeah.
like for 3 hours every night. It's I got friends Erica and Danielle who are just like they'd elect him for president if they could, and like in A's Twitter, I've again, I'm 51. I always have to be very mindful of not invading spaces that aren't necessarily for me. But I've met so many folks younger than me, folks who've invited me in with open arms. I swore I will not turn this into a name drop fest, but my dear friend Felina, who is just the queen of vibes and looks at baseball in a way that is it's certainly a young person's perspective, but it's helped me be a better fan. And I don't want to lose any of this, man. I don't want to the sense of community that the sports Twitter, the baseball Twitter has given both you and me is just, it's incalculable, man. And I just don't want to, I don't want it to go away. And I kind of feel like, the clock is ticking and the minutes are kind of winding down, but I live in the now,
Yeah.
enjoying as much of it as I can. Every minute of it, dude, it's been wonderful.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm not going to keep you too much longer. That's what I had for you, and I loved that really nice introspective chat about the community and how we just stay sane and stay happy during the season. Because baseball is my happy place. It's
Yeah.
always going to be my happy place. I can say the same for you. So it's great hearing that, like, perspective from others, and it's been great, like, hosting this because I've been able to talk to so many other people that I wouldn't think twice about. Like you mentioned, you wouldn't think twice about Toronto. I wouldn't think twice about the Rangers, but, like, I love talking to people from all these different teams, so it's just a lot of fun. So, thank you so much for coming on and chatting and commiserating with me about these teams and terrible ownership. But obviously, best of luck in the series too. It should actually be kind of a fun series because you never know what's going to happen with these two.
No, it's true. It's true. And I'm always get a blast out of, I'm a delicate Californian flower. So whenever I see teams have to go to the Midwest and deal with the weather that you guys have to deal with out that way, my sympathies will be with you. I hope there's a breeze in your future.
I hope so too. It's too hot. All right. Well, thank you again. Remind people where they can find you in case for some crazy reason they don't already follow you.
Yeah, if you want more of these pithy takes and bad comedy, you can find me on Twitter, X, whatever. I am at that bootleg guy, all one word. Always happy to engage, talk baseball, A's, great food takes. Remember, pickles are terrible, just so you know. And no, I'm always easy to find and love interacting and engaging. And Crystal, I can't thank you enough. This was an absolute blast, and best of luck to your Sox the rest of the way.
Thank you so much. Well, we will chat again soon. But
Yes,
until
ma'am.
now, bye.